I wonder what the delivery system is all about.
Every single time I try to make a funny, lighthearted video, it gets completely unhinged. Today we're talking about Northrop Grumman's most iconic vehicle of all time. Every aviation nerd just sat forward in their chair because if I don't pick their favorite Northrop Grumman plane, they're going to roast me in the comments section. Because if you don't know, Northrop Grumman is a defense contractor primarily known for making warplanes, and they've created some of the most iconic and effective warplanes the world has ever seen. Some of those planes include the F-4F Wildcat, the F-6F Hellcat,
the introduction music is really
A-10
on point.
Warthog, the B-21 stealth bomber, and its replacement A-10 Warthog,
primary gun, brrrt.
F-6F Hellcat, America's
primary gun, brrrt. Brrrt.
gun with wings, the A-10 Warthog, the B-21 stealth bomber, and its replacement, the B-21 Raider. But all of these pale in comparison to Northrop Grumman's most iconic and durable vehicle of all time. A vehicle that was designed to perform its tasks swiftly, despite snow or rain or heat or gloom of night. The LLV, the Long Life Vehicle, aka the mail truck.
Long Life Vehicle, the mail truck? I wonder how they deliver our mail here.
You've got to be shitting me.
It's definitely not like one of those.
Yeah, the same people that made like half the planes in US military history also made your friendly neighborhood mail truck. I can only imagine that the US Postal Service put out a memo like, hey, we're looking for a vehicle to help deliver packages, and the US government was like, oh, package, payload, potato, potato, same thing. Call up Northrop Grumman. They're really good at delivering that type of stuff. Okay, Northrop Grumman's used to putting warheads on foreheads, now they're putting parcels on porches. It's the same thing. Now all I need is for Lockheed Martin to start making action figures and my life will be complete.
You put munitions, chips, and toys?
Standard issue is insufficient.
Okay, all jokes aside, I'm actually legitimately upset that this thing is named the LLV. I mean, it's made by Northrop Grumman, the makers of the F-4F Wildcat and the F-6F Hellcat, and you didn't name this the MAILCAT? Are you fucking kidding me?
Okay, I was gonna say, like, LLV sounds nice and quick, and it's kind of okay, but he's got a point. MAILCAT sounds way more badass. Maybe that's what Schwab was trying to tell me.
No, I did the ad. Thanks for finally being in a YouTube video with a shirt on for once.
With a shirt on.
Nice thong, Borat. This video is brought to you by Zydax. Custom gaming PCs are all made right here in America with American tech support. They can do any type of customization you want, or they have pre-built ones ready to ship right now. And then we have one of our newest sponsors, Zaka Life Recovery Balm. It's made right here in America, and it's the best thing I've found for aches, pains, and athletic injuries. It blows every other topical treatment I've ever tried out of the water. I'm gonna have both those sponsors and discount codes linked down below. Let's get back to the video. So after finding out that the mail truck that I've grown up with my entire life was actually made by Northrop Grumman, I decided, hey, I'm gonna make a video on this. This is gonna be hilarious. It's gonna be lighthearted. It's gonna be funny. It's gonna be great. So I started looking up the specs. I started looking up the history, how this came to be. And then I asked myself one simple question. Wait a minute. Why on earth is a defense contractor making this little tiny car when an automotive contractor probably could have done the same thing better?
That is
a good
question, to be fair.
And per usual, to absolutely nobody's surprise, it's because once again, the government ruins everything. All right, so let's take it from the top. Once upon a time in 1775, the United States Continental Congress says, hey, delivering mail is super duper important because we don't have email and phones and telegraphs yet, and delivering letters is the only way that we can communicate. So we need to establish a post office, and we're going to take one of our smartest founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, and make him the first postmaster general to figure this entire thing out. Then the government pretty much immediately decides, hey, we want this to kind of be a government agency, but also we don't want to have to give it any tax money to be able to run itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it a legal monopoly. We're going to go ahead and say that the US Postal Service is the only entity that is legally allowed to deliver the mail. That way,
Jesus Christ. Apparently, America has monopoly in its blood. You guys have that with the internet too. Damn, that's insane. The company that makes the Javelin anti-tank missiles makes calculators used in public schools. Damn.
The U.S. Postal Service is going to be guaranteed to get 100% of the business, so they're going to have enough money to be able to fund themselves and not have to rely on taxpayer money. And this is still going on to this day. This is a legally recognized and regulated monopoly. Buh! What about FedEx and UPS? Buh! That's actually a good question out of you for once.
I was
So the
gonna ask,
monopoly
like,
only
what
applies to
about
like letters
those?
and mail and shit like that. Packages are technically different and there's allowed to be commercial competition there. That's why UPS and FedEx primarily only deliver packages. Now I say usually because there is an exception that if you have something of vital importance that needs to be like overnighted to somewhere immediately, you are allowed to use FedEx or USPS to ship that if it's of vital importance. And I know what you're thinking. It seems like there's a pretty big gray area there. I mean, who sets the criteria as to whether or not something is important enough to violate the US Postal Service?
Like, how does that even work? You have to go through the paperwork and prove that you're basically like, you have to send that, it's mandatory? Or do people just like abuse that system? Probably it costs more because like, here, if you want something delivered fast, it costs you like an arm and a leg. Very expensive.
Services legal
Don't
monopoly
recommend.
and be able to use FedEx or UPS
But it's
to send a letter
crazy that
or
they
an
have
important
a
document. Well, obviously, that would be
monopoly
the
on
U.S.
that
Postal
still.
Service's in-house federal law enforcement agency, the Postal Inspectors. I'm not
Wait,
shitting
what?
you. The mailmen have their own federal law enforcement agency.
You have a postal inspector?
See, I had no idea.
Wow. U.S. Postal Inspector.
Now, typically, the postal inspectors are doing really great things, like making sure that people aren't sending bombs or
That
drugs through the
footage,
mail, or
man.
investigating people that have had their mail stolen, which, if you didn't know, is actually a federal crime. And back in the day in 1775, when the post office and the postal inspectors were founded, Congress levied
Federal
the death
crime is
penalty
pretty
for
bad,
stealing
right?
mail. And while that's all fine and dandy, once in a while, the postal inspectors get a wild hair in their ass and they decide that they are going to enforce their legalized monopoly. For example, back in 1993, a big company called Equifax was using a private courier to deliver all of their mail, not just their packages. And because of this, the U.S. Postal Inspectors launched an armed raid of their company headquarters, determined that their mail wasn't important enough to be overnighted, and that they were legally required to use the United States Postal Service, and then gave them a $30,000 fine.
Armed? That seems excessive. What the bejeebus?
Yeah, if you live in America and you run a business and you decide that you don't like using the United States Postal Service and you're going to exclusively try to use like FedEx or UPS or something, there is a greater than 0% chance that armed mailmen in body armor will show up to your headquarters and raid your business, tell you that's illegal, and then give you a fine. Okay, do I want to talk shit right now? Because that seems absolutely insane and ridiculous. Yeah, a little bit.
Crazy.
Am I gonna? Absolutely not, because they know where I live, okay? I didn't know they existed until yesterday, and already Special Forces mailman is on the top of my list of people I'm not gonna fuck with. So everybody kind of already knows that being a mail carrier is a government job, but most people don't understand to the extent that the U.S. Postal Service is its own government entity, so much so that it necessitates its own federal law enforcement agency. So going back to the Grumman MAILCAT and the actual physical transportation of the mail, it always just kind of went with the times. Back in the 1700s when they were founded, it was delivered on horseback. When cars came out and they became more and more common, the post office began using more and more cars. So the U.S. Postal Service would just acquire whatever cars they needed whenever they needed them, and this went on for decades. But by the 1930s and 1940s, it was becoming a huge issue because the USPS had acquired a ton of different cars. They were all different makes, all different models. They all drove different. They all had different carrying capabilities.
That sounds actually pretty funny. And be like, yeah, we need more cars. Let's get this model this time. Someone looking at a catalog, and then you have someone working there going like, you know what? I would like this model to work in it. So yeah, boss, hey, we need this model in particular. Why? Because I need to take the kids to the match in the weekend and use the company car.
They all required different mechanics, different parts.
I wonder if that
it was a
ever
huge
happened.
logistical nightmare for this enormous fleet of vehicles. As I'm sure you can imagine, it would be like 100 times easier if all of the vehicles in the U.S. postal fleet were the same exact thing and all had the same capability, requiring the same replacement parts, the same type of mechanics, and you could teach all the postal carriers how to drive one vehicle and one vehicle only. So at the end of World War II, with hundreds of thousands of Americans returning home and looking for jobs, the United States Postal Service recognized a very unique opportunity with the Willys Motor Company Jeep. Because the Jeep was being used by the US military, there was already a ton being manufactured, and a lot of the people returning home from the military already knew how to drive it. There was a ton of people qualified to work on it mechanically,
that makes sense.
and there was a ton of excess parts around. And with the
that all
military
makes sense.
downsizing, there was a huge surplus of them, so it was a perfect fit in pretty much every way. It is a rare case of the government doing something 100% right.
Yeah,
and
honestly,
the United
that
States
sounds really
Postal
good.
Service adopted the Jeep as their
Yo, that
primary
looks
vehicle.
so cool.
And that worked for like 40 years, but as the US got bigger and bigger with more and more people, and people started sending more and more mail and more packages, the capacity that the Jeep could hold simply wasn't enough, and the United States Postal Service wanted something that was capable of carrying more mail. But you have to remember, this is a government agency, and they can't do anything simple when it comes to getting new equipment, so they can't just go over to like Ford or Chevy and be like, hey, build me.
Every time you talk government, I have to think like, yeah, I don't think there's a single government that doesn't have a fuck ton of paperwork that they need to get done before they can do even a small change. And it has to go through several departments, and there's like, here at least, a lot of corruption and rubbing the palms of the proper people, you know, like...
me a new mail truck. No, they have to figure out the exact specifications that they're looking for, and then they have to send it out to all the government contractors so that they can all put a bid in on it. That way the government contractors can come in, do the exact bare minimum, and make a ton of money. I mean, let's just look at the LLV, for example. They wanted this thing to weigh a maximum of 3,000 pounds. Guess how much it weighs? Exactly 3,000 pounds. They wanted it to be able to carry...
That's actually really funny. It's like okay, so they have to put a government bid on it to get the contract, and then they do the bare minimum what the contract requires. I mean, that's business to you. That is smart business to you, but also pretty hilarious.
A minimum of 1,000 pounds. Guess how much it can carry? Exactly 1,000 pounds on the dot. They wanted it to be this tall, this wide, this long, and Grumman came along and said, dope, I'm gonna make a metal fucking rectangle exactly that size, throw an engine and some wheels on it, and call it a good day. They literally made a mobile filing cabinet, which, to be fair, in hindsight, after serving in the military, I should have been able to recognize that the mail truck that I grew up with was absolutely a military-grade piece of equipment built by the cheapest bidder. I mean, this is what I drove in the military, the Humvee ambulance, and I mean, the similarities are there. I mean, they both look like the blueprints for them were drawn by a third grader that didn't know how to draw.
They were like, hey, would you like a tin can with wheels? The minimal viable product.
Car yet, and then the 3D renderings were made out of fucking Legos. Now, to be fair though, while I have driven the Humvee ambulance and it's a miserable experience, I've never driven a mail truck, so I don't actually know what that's like. So I turned to the internet because surely some mailman has written something somewhere on the planet that is going to tell me what that experience is like, and here's what I found. Quote, regular driving around town was pretty bearable, but driving the LLV on the highway shouldn't even be legal. I've had to do it a few times, and those times were probably the most terrified I've been while operating
on the highway.
Riding a motorcycle over 100 miles an hour? No problem. Merging onto the highway in a mail truck? You couldn't pay me to do it again. The sluggish acceleration, deafening noise, and harsh vibration were all bad enough, but knowing the body of the vehicle would crush like a soda can in an accident is what made it such a frightening experience. Nope, I was right, because that is to a T what it's like to drive a military ambulance. I got one of those things going 75 one time thanks to an enormous hill, and it felt like I was re-entering the Earth's atmosphere as everything that wasn't strapped down rattled out of place and started falling to the floorboard. Now, I don't know this for certain, but driving a Humvee or an LLV really fast kind of seems like anal beads, you know? The faster you go, the bumpier it gets, and if you go too fast, there's gonna be shit everywhere.
What did he just say? Brian.
There's gonna be shit everywhere. Oh, Jesus.
This does not seem appropriate to
That
watch in
is a
front of the
great
baby.
analogy.
Now, to be fair to the Grumman MailCat, is it a turd? Absolutely, but it is really, really tough. Because here's some of the testing criteria the LLV had to be able to meet before it would be adopted as the USPS postal vehicle. We have drive 5,760 miles at 55 miles an hour with zero malfunctions and zero broken parts. Drive 11,520 miles at 45 miles an hour on gravel with zero malfunctions and zero broken parts. Drive 2,880 miles, stopping every 250 feet, accelerating to at least 15 miles an hour in between stops with zero malfunctions and zero broken parts. Drive 960 miles on cobblestone, zero broken parts. Drive 960 miles over potholes, ensuring that every single wheel hits the pothole at least 35,000 times with zero broken parts. To accomplish that, they took a Chevy S10 chassis, shortened the wheelbase so it could have a tighter turn radius, and then made the entire body of the vehicle out of aluminum so it couldn't rust. So at a minimum, at least it's tough. Despite the fact that it is really tough, it is finally time to start replacing the United States Postal Service carrier vehicle because, well, the engine that they put in these things is an engine from the 1970s known as the Iron Duke, and this bad boy's getting like 9 miles to the gallon. This is the same engine they were putting in the Cavalier and the Trailer Park Ferrari back in the day. I mean, the Pontiac Fiero. Don't laugh, the Pontiac Fiero is high-class white trash, okay? The only thing cooler than that one...
He's just still laughing that he says high-class white trash. How can I not laugh? You're literally setting me up to laugh. God damn it. But yeah, that sounds rough to go like really fast speed on a highway.
When I was growing up was the 2002 Dale Earnhardt Edition Monte Carlo. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. The main problem with the LLV is the gas mileage, okay? Because it only gets 9 miles to the gallon, you have to realize this is like the biggest fleet of vehicles that the United States has. There's over 140,000 of these things. Meaning that for every single penny that gas prices go up, the U.S. Postal Service has to spend an additional $8 million on fuel alone. And this is the part where you're like, oh, America's capitalist, that's fine. That's the cost of doing business. Just raise the prices of your services and it's covered. It's no big deal. You would think that, but remember, the U.S. Postal Service is a government regulated monopoly, meaning that anytime they want to change their pricing, the government has to sign off on it and the government takes forever to do anything. Another example of this would be like the power company, right? Because you can't shop around for different power providers the same way you look for like an internet service provider or a cell phone provider. You only have one power company available where you live, the same way you only have one post office available where you live. Anytime the power company wants to raise their rates, the government has to sign off on it, and it's a huge deal. Same thing applies to the Postal Service and stamps or anything else. Because of this, they can't effectively—
Oh, damn. Even like stamp prices that the government has to sign off on? That is— damn. That is something, all right. Damn. Yeah. Not the best to have such an old design, I would say.
Adapt and change their prices, so it's a humongous issue. So how do we solve this? Well, there's two options. You could A, get rid of the monopoly that's set in place because it's no longer effective for what it was originally supposed to do by helping the USPS, and now it's actually hindering them more than it's helping because they're
I don't
no
think they
longer
want to get
able
rid
to
of the
change their
monopoly,
prices
though,
to actually be competitive.
because
or
it profits
you
them.
could B, make them get different vehicles. And obviously, we're absolutely 100% of the time going to go with B because the US government or any government ever really is never ever going to give up control, and they have control over the USPS, and they're never ever going to let that go. They would rather see that thing burn to the ground than give up control over it. So obviously the USPS is getting new vehicles. But then that bites the US Postal Service in the ass because remember, they're a government agency and they can't just like go to Toyota and be like, hey, Toyota, that new truck that you guys just came out with that's $10,000 and really cool, can we buy a bunch of those for fleet vehicles? No, they can't do that. They have to figure out the specs they want, then they have to send that out and let all these defense contractors bid on them. And then after they bid, they have to give the defense contractors millions of dollars so that they can develop the new vehicle. So they're going to pay for all the R&D up front. And then when Oshkosh Defense wins the bid with this fucking thing that looks like it was animated by Pixar, the other company that they beat is going to turn around and file a lawsuit and—
Are you kidding me? We actually had a lawsuit over this. Jesus Christ. This is getting funnier and funnier. Oh. Yeah, like, I don't think anyone would give up a monopoly. It's not necessarily just the government that would want that, right? It's like any person.
sue because they're saying that it wasn't a fair enough competition, despite the fact that the US taxpayers literally gave them all the money for R&D in the first place. And then that's going to delay the whole project more, and then bottom line, it's going to take 20 fucking years to fix the issue the entire time the US Postal Service is struggling and trying to figure shit out while the government refuses to let them actually do their job and be fucking competitive. And it just sucks because the US Postal Service is sacred. There's nothing more sacred to society than the mailman. All I wanted to do was have a happy, lighthearted video because I thought it was funny that Northrop Grumman was making mail trucks, and now after researching it, I'm gonna get upset every time I watch my mail lady deliver the mail because I'm gonna recognize that she's wearing a parka and overalls inside of her vehicle because the heater barely works because she's driving a 40-year-old mail truck that's a piece of shit because the government fucks up everything they even get near touching. So in conclusion, I guess that's the story of why mail trucks are made by defense contractors, and if you're a mail carrier, I've always appreciated you, but I'm gonna be honest.
Oh no, it's like when you have too much knowledge and you're just like, I feel kinder for having my mail delivered by you. Thank you for putting up with that shit. It's kind of like our situation with the mailman, that they have to do certain things, or the people that that have to travel to take photos of our electricity counters instead of us just uploading the photo and them checking once a year. It's like those things are like, I feel for you.
I have another level of appreciation for what you do because I truly, genuinely had no idea the levels of bureaucratic bullshit that you had to hurdle on your way to get mail into my mailbox. So thank you. Seriously, thank you. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over the fatelectrician.com.
This was a good one. This was definitely a good one.
Out.
It's absolutely crazy to think about all the things
the more history I read, the less I trust the government. And maybe,
that people do.
Just maybe, that's why in the American education system, they emphasize math and science and English way more than they emphasize history.
There goes the tinfoil hat, man. Oh. But yeah, the LLV, ladies and gentlemen. That's funny.